Grace and peace, grace and peace. Thank you guys for tuning in to another episode of You're Doing It Wrong. My name is Brandon. Last month I had the honor and privilege of having my brothers Jamel and Elder Lee just having a discussion on fatherhood. Just a really, really great discussion. I have finished editing that video and just they did a phenomenal job just opening up, being vulnerable and transparent, and just had a really good time just enjoying these brothers' experience and wisdom, man. Just a lot of wisdom going on. So if you haven't had an opportunity to check it out, please do. On Spotify, iTunes, the visuals are on YouTube. But this month I'm very, very honored and blessed to have some more special guests here with me today. Miss Shirnetta and Miss Paula Lee, just here to continue that conversation. You know, I was making a joke too, because these are coming out, I'm recording a month ahead, and it would have been wise to like do this around Mother's Day and record it then, but you know how things go. I guess I'm on brand doing it wrong, but it's still a universal conversation and a good one to have. So I'm just excited to discuss motherhood with these individuals today. And like I said, I'm not gonna hold you guys too much. We're gonna jump right in. But how are you guys doing today? Start with you, Shirnetta. How are you?
I'm good.
You good?
I'm good. I'm glad to be here, and thank you for inviting us.
Absolutely, absolutely. How about you, Miss Paula? How are you doing today?
Today is a good day. Thank you, Jesus.
It's hot. It's hot.
Yes,
Oh,
it
it's
is.
hot.
Very hot. Yeah. And when I wanted to start this conversation here because I had a conversation with your husbands 2 months ago, and it went really well. And when you guys informed me that, hey, we would love to have a conversation on mother, I was like, man, that was really cool. And I like to think, well, I am an overthinker. And I was like, how am I going to introduce them? And I found myself wrestling with this idea of introducing you as such and such as wives. And I had to catch myself, because I'm like, why do I have to introduce them as such and such wives? Because they can stand on their own merit. And I feel like with a lot of women, they're just kind of viewed as just either wives or just as mothers. And I feel like that's a stigma that kind of only happens to women. It doesn't really happen to men. Because even thinking back on my childhood, I just kind of viewed my mother just as my mother, and not as if she had a life outside of that. So I just wanted to open up and start from there. Like, has that been a struggle? Do you see that just common, that women are just kind of viewed, kind of put in that box and can't have a life outside of just being a wife and a mother? And I'll start with you, Shirnetta. What are your thoughts on that?
So I definitely think that is a universal kind of controversy. I think that, especially in spaces of faith, I think that some women are taught, or some women believe that being a mother is their identity. That's what they were raised to be. That's what they were raised to strive to be. And I think that having a 6-month-old son, that was something that I even kind of wrestled with. When he was born, I've always kind of been very outgoing. I've always been a creative. And I think that when he was born and I was at home on maternity leave, I found myself like, who am I becoming? Who is this person? What happened to my dreams? What happened to, this career that I worked so hard for? And there was some inappropriate guilt there. There was some guilt. And it was, wow, I feel bad about, wanting to go back to work. So I definitely think that, even having my own business and empowering women, I think that is definitely a ongoing conversation about, who women are, what their identity is. And I think that a lot of women and mothers do struggle with that. So yeah.
What about you, Paula?
Definitely identify. I've been there with that one. As a young mom, that was, I always wanted to be a wife and a mom. When people used to ask me, what do you want to be when you grow up? I would say, a wife and a mom. They're like, okay, but what else do you want to be? As if that wasn't noble. And so I never understood why people didn't think like that was enough.
Yeah.
So then I became a wife and a mom, and then like you, baby number one, and it's like, and then people would say, oh, look at you, your little family. Oh, you're William's wife. Oh, you're such and such as mom. And I remember thinking one day inside my head, like, I'm Paula. I have a name. I have a name. And so it was really frustrating for a long while until I went back and grab me again. You really have to grab yourself again. And as you add more children, you know, you have to recreate, like you said, becoming. That's a very appropriate word. You're always becoming, because you're always transitioning. Like at this point, I have become a grandma. So that even has changed the dynamic of how I move, what I say, what I do. So, yeah. At this point in my life, though, and there comes a point where you don't care if somebody says, "Oh, you're William Lee's wife," but when you're in those early stages, it's really it is a little bit tougher.
So where did you learn to value that? Is it kind of a generational thing? Because again, I guess me and Shirnetta are in the same millennial, and that's kind of like a foreign concept where, hey, my desire is to be a wife and a mother, and most people would kind of view that as like old-fashioned, or I want to, because I guess now I think even the statistic is like, you know, the majority of black women, there's a high percentage of black women graduating colleges, so they're more career-oriented women. But who instilled that in you, or is it just something that you always wanted? Did you see that example set before you?
Well, I knew that that had been my mother's desire, and she wasn't able to fulfill that. But more importantly, I think it was God's plan for me. And so I feel like that was innate, because even in my generation, that was very key. I'm a 60s baby. So we're talking, you know, you can bring home the bacon, fried up in a pan, never let your husband forget he's a man because you're a woman. You know, so that was a thing as I was growing up. And so that was why I got the comment, like, why would you want to stay home and raise kids? Because everybody was striving to go to work. So I was an anomaly, and that was hard.
And I think for me, my upbringing was very, very different. So growing up, and I've shared this on many platforms. My mother was married and divorced several times, and as a result, I was raised by single women, a single grandmother, very strong alpha women. And so growing up, marriage and motherhood was not really something that I strived to be. It was, let's go get this money, let's get a career, travel the world. I mean, it was, that just wasn't something that was kind of on my mind, or something that I strived to be. It was definitely something I've always wanted, but it wasn't necessarily, I don't know, I just had a different perspective about it. So growing up, and even, when I met my husband, I was in graduate school at the time, and I was like, oh, I'm about to get my PhD, like I'm just out here living it up. And so when we got married, and when I had a baby, that was when I was just like, wow, like, who am I becoming? But I think that what really reminds me of my identity, and while I was at home, for those 3 months, was really getting into the Word. And God really reminded me that I'm a daughter first.
So you spoke on guilt. How did you overcome that guilt? Is it something that you still struggle with? Because like you said, you get to stay home with your son, and then it's like, man, I have to go back. How did you wrestle with that guilt, or is it something that you're still wrestling with?
No, so I think that how I was able to overcome that was shifting the perspective to, what will my children think of me? Judah, my son, will say, wow, regardless of the decisions that my mother made, she did her best in raising me. So my desire to go back to work, or even if I chose to stay at home, my children wouldn't think of me any different. Because at the end of the day, I'm still a mother. And I'm still, striving, after God. So for me, my inappropriate guilt was just more my own internal thing. And I think that also came, from being in spaces of faith, knowing a lot of different women. I was like, wow, this staying at home thing, like I think I could do this. And I was like, I said, oh, Jesus.
More than a notion.
Yes, it is. And, to that, now that I have a child, and now that I have been home for a couple of months, I have a new level of respect for women and a new level of respect for mothers who do stay at home, who are breastfeeding. I mean, it's just a different array of things I have a respect for with mothers.
And talking about this idea of identity from the outside looking in, I'm able to see like certain double standards that go on, where I was was telling Paula earlier before you got in, this idea of like a man cave where a man, once he comes home from work, he, that expectation is he can go and just be to himself. And it's like, where's that time for a woman to have her woman cave or whatever you want to call it? So how do you guys find time for yourselves?
Let me throw in something here on, because I want to go back to the identity piece, because this kind of is a part of this as well. You had inappropriate guilt, I had inappropriate identity, because although my whole plan was to stay at home and raise my kids, when our first daughter was a year old, I was done. I'm like, this is not what I expected. All I do is talk to a person who can't talk back. It's diapers, more diapers, nights, more nights. And my husband was working 12-hour shifts at the time. So we had one car, which means I'm home. And so after year one, I said, I think I'm going back to work. And he said, well, okay. So I went back to work because I needed that. You're doing a good job. This is how much salary you're going to get paid. I had a skill set, that I was getting paid for. You get reviews and performance and, all of that. And it was the wrong thing for me. And my child paid because I circumvented what he had for me. He told me to stay at home, and it was really both of our responsibility for me to determine how to be successful at that. And I was in the workforce for about 4 years, and my daughter had really bad asthma and allergies, and it was exacerbated by being in daycare after daycare after daycare because I was picky. I was picky where I put my child, and I even created you had to fill out an application to keep my child. Like, I created one, and I would take it in, and if they side-eyed me, I took my application to my child and I went home. Like, if you think this is a joke, this is my prized possession. And God was like, nobody's gonna treat her like you. If you want her done like that, you need to raise her yourself. So I was like, so after 4 years, we bit the bullet, and I came back home, and that was where I began my search for how do we do this effectively? Because there were other moms who were seeking to do what I was doing. And so now my whole strive is to help moms who want to do it. If you don't want to do it, like, I don't ever push being a stay-at-home mom on any woman, because I feel like it's a personal choice. And so when women say to me, well, I don't think I could do what you do, well, don't even try to do what I do. Like, don't, because I'm not gonna try to do what you do either. So my whole thing is, if you want to know, I got a whole list of things for you to be healthy, for your children to be healthy, for your marriage to be healthy. That's my stride. But that was because that came from me being disobedient. It really did.
And I think, Brandon, too, the flip side of this conversation is that, America defines motherhood as giving birth to children. When we don't really talk about, women, I have multiple women who have mothered me. So yes, I do have a biological mother, and my mother's done an excellent job, but Paula has mothered me. There are a lot of people, whether it be work, mentors, women at church, who have poured into me as not only a wife, but as a mother. So I think that that's also, and women who adopt, that's just something that we don't talk about. That's something that America doesn't think about when they think about motherhood. They think about, can you push a baby out? When, that's not really the case.
And Paula, so I'm listening to you and just see all this passion. And you said, when I had my first kid, and if people paid attention to the last episode, you guys have 7 children. And I'm sure you can speak to how tough it is raising one child. And this child is only 2 years old. You've had 7 kids, and you still look youthful, vibrant. Like, you still have things going on. You would think someone who's had 7 kids, like, I'm not doing nothing. Just be so done and just tired. And because even you telling me, hey, I've got things to do now this evening, that you still have kids who are in the home, and you got to go and support them. And I'm just amazed at that. And so I can imagine how tired you can be. And so I guess going back to the original question, how do you find time just for yourself?
I make time.
Okay.
I make time. Because if I'm empty, I'm giving fumes. And nobody wants to breathe fumes. And fumes are deadly. And my fumes are deadly when I'm tired. So I make sure that I carve out times for me. I was telling you earlier that a lot of times if people call me and I'm like, oh, I'm in my office right now. My office is McDonald's parking lot. That's where I go and get in my head and get in the Word, and Jesus and I have conversations. And this is so that when I meet everybody else that I'm going to encounter in my day, I'm not empty. And I'm still able and ready to give. And after I turned 40, was when I decided it would be a good idea for me to take care of my health. So I do carve out time to also work out, and I encourage other people to work out. I'm an ex-fluffy chick, and so I know what it's like to be a heavy woman, and to have had a bunch of babies and not make that time to be healthy. And then I'm like, I woke up one day and I'm like, I need to be alive for all these kids, and it's not fair to them to lose me because I didn't take care of me. So it isn't just about me having me time. My me time isn't just about me. It's about my husband, my children, the people that I mentor, the people that I counsel, the people that I encounter in the grocery store, the people that I encounter on the highways and byways. It's about everybody. It isn't just about me. And so if I could get women to understand that your me time is important and it's not a selfish thing, unless you're making it a selfish thing. Like if your me time is you spend 6 hours on the couch eating bonbons, which is what people used to think of stay-at-home mothering, then your me time is being squandered. But if it's useful and beneficial and fruitful and profitable, then you need to make it. You have to make it. It needs to be a priority.
And so you spoke about being intentional. I would assume it's the same thing with your dreams, because you mentioned having dreams outside of just being, a mother and a wife. And I know you probably don't you have an event coming up this Saturday?
This Saturday.
And so I guess speak to your dreams and how balancing that and I guess what are those dreams that you have?
So for me, as long as I have remembered, I've always had a burden for women. That's just always been my thing. And so as I became an adult, and when, my husband and I got married, I realized that there were there was just a lack of resources for wives in spaces of faith. And so, that is how, the Bonafide Wife came about. And I started that, group with, it was 3 women. And now there's over 60. Wow. So I would love to do that full time. I would love to travel the world to empower women and wives of faith full time. And if I'm honest, balancing my time and being intentional about my dreams is an area of growth. That is an area of growth for me because when I give, when I serve, when I work, I give it 1,000. And sometimes I don't know how to turn that 1,000 off. So now that I'm out for the summer, now that school is out, I'm trying to understand that rest is better than productivity. So yeah.
And what about you, Paul? What are some of your dreams and things that you have?
It's interesting. That's an interesting question because my dream. If you ever read my signage on emails or text message, it says "Living the Dream." Paula, living the dream, fulfilling the call. My dream was to be a wife and a mom. I'm living my dream. I'm fulfilling that call. And so at this point in my life, God is calling me to really, we have the same vision, which is, and I've always had a vision to help women, moms specifically, wives specifically, but any woman, but that's kind of like my wheelhouse and always has been. And for years, people have been saying, you need to write a book, you need to write a book, you need to write this down. Your family is crazy, your family is special, you got all this stuff going on. And I'm like, nobody wants to read my story. And then the Lord one day said, it's time. So I have penned it, and now I am praying for the resources to publish it. And I know that I will be speaking on the circuit as well to women, just to encourage them and to empower them. The exact same thing, because I want to see women receive the help that they need for their health, body, soul, mind, and spirit, so that they can have hope to continue in this calling, because whether you work inside your home or outside your home, whether you gave birth or you adopted or you fought, whatever it is, whatever your station is, it's a calling.
Yeah.
And it takes a lot of work to do this calling well. I mean, you have a lot of women who do it. And my thing is, as long as you've given it your best shot, that's really all anybody can ask. But I'd like to see more resources. Like I want to be able to touch a woman, to have her talk to me. I'm always looking for an older woman who's ahead of me, 5-10 years in some station of her life, to be able to speak to me, speak into my life and say, hey, you know, I had grown kids too, and you know, this is what happened, or you know, this is what I do with my grandchildren. I've never been a grandma before. You know, I mean, I have 3 grandchildren at this point, but this is, you know, still uncharted territory. My oldest grandchild is 8. So as I watch him becoming, like I'm looking at him now and I'm saying, he's on the precipice of preteen. Like I can see that now, and I know I need to handle him differently. My relationship with him needs to change a little bit. But I'd love to talk to another grandma who's, you know, just that much ahead of me and say, what did you do? How did you do this? You know, we need to be there for each other, whatever the stage of life. And I don't even necessarily mean, she doesn't have to be older than me. But if she's ahead of me, in whatever area she's ahead of me, I need her. And we need each other.
Well, I definitely want to make sure I say congrats, because it sounds like you guys are not just having these dreams, but actually living them out. So congrats to that, because again, I wanted to make sure that even though I'm not a mother, I can look from the outside in and just see that double standard that gets put on women, on mothers, and just realizing that my wife isn't just my wife. She isn't just, you know, Autumn's mother, and that she's got a life, she's got dreams outside of that, and wanting to make sure that I touched on that, and just, I thought you guys did a great job. But that led me to just wanting to have a discussion on expectations when you are a mother, and just having, and I think we both can speak to it, just because our kids are so young, and just have this idea of, man, I want my kids to do X, Y, and Z and do this. And I think Paula, as your kids get older, you're like, how they just veer, or maybe they did do as you had expected. Like for me, my expectation, I've got a daughter, Autumn, and just from my experience, I've seen a lot of women take a back seat when it comes to theology, and it's like the men who knows a lot of theology and can have the conversations about the Bible and stuff like that, where, and I don't mean to sound this away, but like the woman may just know like a surface level thing, and it's like, I don't want that for my wife, I don't want that for my daughter. I want them to be just as knowledgeable as I am. But the reality is, she's almost turning 3, and it's like, what am I doing right now to actually be instilling these things? So even I can see having that goal, having that expectation, and the reality is that I even dropped the ball in that arena, just being really willing to acknowledge that and hopefully grow and mature. But what are some expectations that you have as a mother?
I think my husband and I always have these conversations about who Judah and our other children will grow up to be. We talked about, like just the other day was a commercial, we were watching TV, and we said, wow, we hope that when Judah goes to school, that if someone doesn't have lunch, that he would give them lunch. And we talked about all these different scenarios, but I think that above all else, I think that we want him to know who Jesus is. And I think that even for me at his school, I've talked to a lot of moms about, how they're, doing this with the baby, how they're doing this with the baby. And I think that sometimes we can lose sight of what discipleship is within our home with the baby. So I think that for me, I don't expect anything from my children. I think that I expect God to chase them down. I don't really, expect anything from them. I think that, of course, we would want them to, go out and, be, the offsprings of us, but and hope that they will, implement what we've taught them. But I think that, we just want them, to be saved and just to live a life that glorifies God.
What about you, Paul?
My expectations weren't so much for them as it was for God to just be faithful to me as a mom and to lead and guide me and direct me with each child individually and not to lump them together, even though we call ourselves the unit. Each one of them is very individual.
Yeah.
And so my whole thrust was to really brainwash them, Jesus, whatever that looked like. And I have been accused, and I do use that word, accused of brainwashing. Then I'm like, absolutely, it's either me or you. So I choose me. Thank you very much. And so that's been our thrust, is to steer them towards Him in how we act, how William and I treat each other, how we respond to them, when we see ourselves in them.
Yes.
And then we have to say, okay, God, like there have been so many times where I've been disciplining a child and I'll hear the Holy Spirit say, that's you. And then I have to like back up and admit that to that child, like, this is me. I understand you see this in me. I know you do, and I apologize that you see this in me. I'm working on it. I need you to pray for me. I'm gonna pray for you, but you still have to obey me because I'm pointing them ultimately to a Savior. You know, and so I feel like if they can see me apologize, and if they can see that I am not perfect, and they can come to me, and I've always had an open door with them. Come to me. Come correct, but you can always come to me and talk to me about anything. And I'm so thankful that on this side, most of our children are grown. That they've come back and they're like, thank you, Dad, so much for, you know, how you did this or how you did that or how you didn't allow us to do this or how you sacrificed on this end and how, you know, I'm like, we're hearing these words verbalized to us, and it has made the journey, in most cases, on most days, very worth it. You know, there's some days when I'm like, what have we done? But overall, you know, we can just see, you know, that God has got them. You know, and there are times where we see them going left and we're going, uh-oh. Oh gosh, Lord, get them, Jesus, get them, Jesus. And then we have to pray. Do we say? Do we not say? And so again, going back to your question, our expectations are, God, lead me and guide me with each one individually. And it doesn't change. Just because they're adults, it does not change. That prayer is still the same.
And you spoke about not being perfect, and I think I'm talking about how we had expectations on our kids, but I think even the expectation on us as parents is that we've got to get everything right. You know, how is that when you realize that, and I just haven't gotten things right? I don't know if you have any personal stories or anything that you can share that, man, I just realized that, hey, I'm gonna mess up, and I've got to be okay with that. I'm gonna have to learn and grow, and there has to be room for grace for myself, that I can't be so hard on myself. I don't know if you've had that.
I mean, I think that's daily. But I think that's daily, but I think even labor, my labor was, you know, I wanted this natural birth. Oh, I was gonna do it with no medication. Oh, I went to 7 centimeters. And I was like, oh no, come on, we're gonna have to do this.
We're gonna try.
Right? Because, you know, for me, giving birth, the status of perfection was I was gonna have this water birth. It was gonna be, I was gonna have this spiritual experience with God, and you know, I was gonna do it with no medication. And while I did it for over 12 hours, you know, baby's heart rate started dropping, so I had to get an epidural. And I remember crying. I was like, I got an epidural. Like, I'm horrible. Like, I'm a horrible mother. Like, you know, and people were looking at me like, girl, do you know how many people come here and get drugs every day?
Guilt number one. Number one guilt. First guilt of motherhood. Right.
So before he was even born, I had this expectation that, you know, I was going to do everything by the book. Everything was going to be perfect. And that was what, to me, it was distorted, but to me, that was my idea of what my natural labor birth experience was. But I think that's daily. You know, I think it's daily that I'm reminded that this is not perfect. You know, whether, you know, he blow out his diapers or, you know, we spill milk or whatever. Motherhood is not perfect. It can't be.
It's not perfect. And going back to the labor piece, I think that's pretty common. I felt the same way too, and I was 20 when I had my first, almost 21 when I had my first child. Actually, I was 21. 3 days later, 3 days before I turned 21, and because I was young, I'm like, oh, this is gonna be a breeze. I go in the hospital, and then I have to get the epidural, and 64 hours later, in a C-section, here she comes. You know, and ever since then, I've been an epidural poster child, though. So, like, I would go in, like, waiting for my epidural because I felt like there's no shame in this. There's no shame in this, and you don't know what you don't know. Number one, and number two, there is one perfect parent, and we are not that. None of us. Jesus is the only perfect parent. So I think we have to really allow, you know, the grace piece. And I've asked my children, you know, to extend grace to me, you know, and have heard them say, like, with case in point, our last two children, we had 2 children in the 80s, 3 children in the 90s. 2 children in the 2000s. So our poor 2000s children, because we are now older, we are very, very middle-aged, they're not getting us like those older children got us. We don't have the juice anymore. We just don't have it. And so we've apologized to them, like, guys, we are so sorry. I know you came on the tail end of all those fun field trips we used to do and all the park runs and everything. And they're like, it's okay, Mom and Dad. We really understand that you guys are just old now. But you know, we have to understand that these are just our limits. That's what it is. We'd like for them to extend grace. They don't have to, but we'd like for them to extend grace, and we make up for it in other ways. And there are just gonna be times where you can only do what you can do.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought up that labor piece, because as a man, like, I can't relate. Like, I was there.
No joke.
Yeah, I was there with my wife, but it's just like you just see your spouse in just this way, and it's like you feel helpless. It's like nothing at all that I can do, and just that amount of pressure that is put on women, where it's just like you gotta have everything so natural, and you know, don't do no drugs, and it's just like just from, like you said, he wasn't even born yet, and I had this pressure as a mother and just dealing with that. But I thought that was just a great segue, because when I was coming up with topics, I was like, hey, what are some good things that we can talk about? And you mentioned infertility, and it was just like something that, again, as a man, that I'm not even really cognizant of, but as I've been in church, I realized it's such a big thing. You know, and how many women are struggling, or families, I should say, are struggling with that. And again, wanting to have real conversations, but just handle it with the sensitivity that it deserves, because we personally know people who have gone through these things. And so you have brought up the topic. I didn't know if you were speaking just from your own personal experience, or speaking from people that you've known and how you've engaged, how you've ministered to individuals. If this, again, I don't know how you wanted to take that topic.
So I've experienced with both. So I've never had an infertility diagnosis, but certainly when my husband and I started trying to conceive, it took me over a year. And due to me, since high school, being on birth control, because I just had a lot of female, challenges, birth control, kind of, when you get off of it, a lot of, women are finding now that when you get off of it, it does kind of, mess with, your monthly, and just how your body works. So I went through a year of wondering, oh my God, what if I, never have children? And I also felt guilty, because when my husband and I got married, my husband, grew up with siblings, and I'm an only child. So growing up, I was like, oh no, if I'm gonna get married, I'm gonna, have a baby when I'm like 35. I'm not gonna, have a baby. And so I felt guilty, because I was like, oh Lord, now that, we finally decided to have a baby, now I can't get pregnant. So I did have that experience, and I had a lot of women walking with me through that. And of course I prayed, and I said, Lord, this is your will. I believe that motherhood is a ministry, just like marriage is. But then there was a transition when I found out I was pregnant, and I had friends who do have infertility diagnosis. So then I felt guilty.
Yes.
Because I was like, oh, here we were walking this thing out together.
Right.
Now I have to step back, and, women were honest with me. They said, Shirnetta, I don't know how to support you because you're pregnant and I can't get pregnant. It's been 5 years or 8 years or whatever. But, even as a social worker professionally, I work with a lot of people who have infertility challenges. And I think that, especially in spaces of faith, it's a hard thing to discuss. It's a hard thing to talk about. But I think that I definitely wanted us to talk about it on this forum because it's something that in spaces of faith we don't discuss. We don't really talk about what it's like for women to be around, even for our church. We have women who have, like Paula, 7 children. But what about the wives who do have empty arms on Mother's Day or, just every day, and they desire that. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Remember on Mother's Day at our church, my husband asked me to come up when he emceed to talk to the moms on Mother's Day, and I was like, okay, Lord, well, what do you want me to say? Because, I personally know a couple of the women who are suffering with infertility, and if you've ever been pregnant, you're a mom. If you've ever conceived, you're a mom. And so I wanted that to be made known, to those moms who've dealt with that, because that's really, I've never personally dealt with that, but my heart does go out. I'm empathetic. I will never say, oh, I understand what you're going through.
Right.
I don't.
Right.
I don't understand.
Right.
But I feel like I know how to pray.
Yeah.
I know how to pray, and I know how to follow up, and I know how to, to love on people. So if I can do that from that perspective, then that's kind of where, I kind of tuck that in. But it might not be a bad idea if you have some women on here who can speak
absolutely.
to that, because I'd love to hear about that.
And I think for me, I went through months where I took multiple pregnancy tests. And no one can ever describe the feeling of sitting on the toilet in the bathroom and saying, oh, it's negative, and it's just, it's heartbreaking, to wonder or to ever think. And I experienced that for over a year. So I can just imagine women and wives who experience that for longer. I just can't fathom that.
And then alongside that, because along with infertility, there, miscarriage is another piece that I think, could be implemented as well, because I think it's one thing to have never been pregnant, but I think it's also another thing to have miscarried, and I have had that experience. And this is very interesting. I feel like I'm an anomaly in so many areas of my life, and this is another one. My very last child, I was pregnant, and my whole family was like, you're having twins this time, you're having twins. And I'm like, come on, y'all, we're not having twins. And then I wake up one morning in a pool of blood. And I stand up, baby drops out. And so we go into the OB, they put me on the monitor, and they say, here's where baby A was, and here's baby B. And I said, what? They said, oh, you didn't know you're having twins? What? Like, what? And I didn't know. And so, because I couldn't have a D&C where they go in and scrape the uterus, that means I now have to carry this baby, and so I bleed for the whole 9 months, and then I go on bed rest for the rest of the 9 months, because we don't know, if this baby's even gonna hold. So I'm going through a whole pregnancy wondering, am I gonna lose this one too? And so there's that dichotomy of, I lost the baby, but I'm still pregnant. Like, how do you reason with that in yourself? That was really hard emotionally, and that was the first time I dealt with depression. Also, because you got this huge hormonal, depletion, but you still have those other crazy pregnancy hormones going on at the same time, and you're on bed rest, and the child that I just had was still a baby. I couldn't even lift her. I had to have people pick her up and put her on my lap so I could love on her. So it's a really hard season. So.
And I think the other thing, too, with not knowing, even going back to the infertility, is I felt like I disappointed my husband. I was like, my husband's gonna leave me, because I can't have a baby.
That's real.
And I said, I knew that was something that we both desired, but that was something that I wanted to give to my husband, and I said, what if I can't have kids? Will he still love me the same? Will he still, and not to mention, just being transparent, when you're dealing with infertility or when you don't know if you can have a child, sex and intimacy becomes a task.
Yes.
If we're just keeping it real,
yes.
We
That's
married.
good.
Yes.
We married.
That's good. Yes.
It becomes a task, and it's like, oh, I'm ovulating. Come on, let's get it.
Let's get it. That's right. Yeah.
So I think that's another piece, the strain that it puts on a marriage.
Yes.
And while I love my son, and while Paula, I'm sure you can agree with me with your kids, but my marriage is first.
Correct.
At the end of the day,
Correct.
and if we're not healthy and if we're not in a good space, everything else is just put to shambles.
That's good. That's good.
And again, I'm glad y'all are here because, again, from a male's perspective, I'm completely oblivious to all these things. And I think the conversations like this need to happen. And how I always kind of view things, because like I said, I can't relate. I can't even imagine to understand what you guys go through and other women go through with that. I think like apologetically, where I can see where so many people will be angry at God.
Yeah.
They would see so many people. I remember hearing one time where I think it was a pastor, a preacher, he was just talking about how this woman, she was just so upset that she couldn't have a child, but she would see people in the world who, I guess just to be blunt, felt like they didn't deserve a kid.
Yeah.
And she's here like, I know I would love this kid.
Yeah.
I know I would raise them knowing God.
Yeah.
I know these things, but why are you not blessing me with a child, but you're blessing this pagan person who can care less about you with multiple children, and they don't even care about their kids. So I don't know if there's anything that you guys can speak to of being angry at God.
Yeah. I was never necessarily angry. I think mine was just more so of asking God if it was if it was his will, just like single people, when you're single, some go through a phase of, God, this is my desire. Is this your will? Is marriage a ministry for me? Is this something that you want to walk out? So for me, it was the same thing. It was, okay, I'm married, but maybe I'm not supposed to be a mother. You know what I mean? Then there's this IVF conversation. Right? That's a whole nother conversation.
Yes.
Where,
that's hardcore.
Yes, it is.
And what is IVF?
Help me.
In vitro fertilization.
Yes.
Okay, in vitro.
Yes.
And it's costly.
Yes.
It's very costly. And there's no guarantee. And I've seen so many people go through IVF, more than once.
Yep.
To have those eggs harvested and then they implant them, and you hope that they take, and then they don't take, and then you go through it's a death.
Yeah.
It's literally a death that happens, and so the parents grieve for a child, and I know what it's like to grieve for a child you've never even met. So there's that piece, and then you want, do we do this? Do we have enough money to do this again?
Yeah.
Do we have the fortitude to go through this again, not knowing, what the I cannot imagine, walking in those shoes. I cannot imagine walking in those shoes.
Yeah.
It again, still can't imagine just to be in that position, and like I said, these are difficult conversations and difficult topics to have, and even talking, because I think I have heard of in vitro. Is it the embryo that they have, or
I think, don't quote me, but I think it's where they harvest the eggs and then they mix the egg with the sperm in a petri.
And so it becomes an embryo, essentially.
Exactly. And then you're hoping that fertilized egg will implant.
Yes.
And for whatever reason, because it's hostile up in there.
Yeah.
I mean, the whole trek is just a hostile environment. So the fact that a sperm and an egg actually make it and survive is nothing short of a miracle.
Yeah.
Like there are all kinds of acids that should kill it off. Like that do kill off most of the sperm. So the one sperm that makes it, like he's a G.
Yeah.
I mean, like, just straight up.
Yes.
way that works.
So Lee, you got a couple G's over there, don't you? Those who hear Lee's on the camera.
Lee's a coward.
But yeah, again, just wanting to have real and open and honest conversations, and like I said, just talking about in vitro, it led me to this topic of wanting to address and I don't like necessarily doing current events, but in those who are paying attention to the climate of things. I know Alabama has done away with abortions, even if it's in case of incest or rape, and so many people have been up in arms. And even when we're having this conversation about abortion, there's so many misconceptions, so many voices that are not heard, so many, those who are on the pro-life, it's always assumed that just white evangelical Republicans who have the last say, and so just the optics of it just look really bad, of these white men trying to tell me what to do with my body, and other voices aren't heard, and then there's misconceptions about those women who have abortions don't want to be mothers, so they're kind of looked down upon, and not realizing that, hey, they're in a difficult situation. And again, speaking as a man, I can't imagine a woman being in that situation. And also at the same time, and I don't necessarily want to speak out of turn, but I do feel like those men who, impregnate these women, where are they? A lot of times we hear the story is, here's $300. Where's the responsibility that's being taken when you do what you do and you understand the consequences, and then you're gone and you leave this woman to fend for herself, and then we're upset that she makes a decision that I guess most. And again, it's not that it's always people who are religious who have a pro-life stance, but then we're looking down upon this woman who's forced in a very tough position to make a decision for herself. And we hear this other common notion is you only care about the child in the womb, you don't care about the child outside the womb, and all these things that go on. And so I wanted to have this opportunity that I've got individual, and we all have the same worldview. And I also wanted to say this too, just to put my cards on the table. I'm not a big fan of politics, but I did go to a very conservative school. Most of you may know a little bit about Liberty University. And just when you say that, for people who are aware, that connotation of just being very conservative, very Republican. And I was in school around the time Obama was getting elected, so 2008. And so what I was learning from that worldview is they really pretty much focused on two issues, traditional marriage and pro-life. And even though you can make the biblical argument for both of those things, those were the two main issues, and everything else was secondary. And so for me, it was kind of man, if you had this was anything other than pro-life, it's how can you vote for X, Y, and Z? And as I've grown and matured, I realized that there's other issues, that it's not just as black and white as we think it is, that there's some gray. And again, just wanting to provide opportunity, platform to people share their thoughts, because I don't know where you guys stand on the issue, and realize that there's nuance within people who are Christians who have this worldview, and that we can't just polarize each other and just get mad at someone and just say, you're just trying to deny women's rights, or or even the reverse. So it just wanted to give you guys an opportunity to speak and share your thoughts and opinions on the matter.
So abortion is something that I'm very familiar with. I personally have never had an abortion, but I've been practicing social work for 6 years. And I've had multiple clients all the way to age 10 who have had abortions. Had family members who had abortions. So my experience with it, I think that there are multiple different scenarios that go into play. Me personally, I do believe that life begins at conception. So I believe that if you take a pregnancy test and it's positive, there's life. That's my personal opinion. I think what frustrates me around the climate of America right now is that if you are saved, anything can be redeemed. Anything. So, and I've seen it. So I think that sometimes we get caught up in the argument, what's theologically correct, what she has done, the sin that she did. And I think that sometimes we don't extend grace. And I think that sometimes, and I've seen it, where church hurt can cause someone to run to the clinic to get an abortion. I think that we as a church have to, we have to do a better job at welcoming people, welcoming the young girls who come in, welcoming, teenagers who don't know what to do. I work with homeless youth who have been pregnant, sleeping at the laundromat. Ms. Harold, what do I do? You know what I mean? So I think we have to do a better job at being more graceful and not always extending our own personal views, but really doing the work of God, really doing what Jesus would do. And although I personally disagree, let me get you to some resources. Let me try to, I'm gonna share the gospel now. But I'm also gonna try to help you. Let's talk about that. Where are you at? How can, what resources can we put into place to take care of the baby? Let me, call on, so I think that we just got to do a better job at that. And it does frustrate me, when I'm on Facebook and Instagram and, it's a lot. It's a lot there. So, yeah.
Well, I will start by saying I am absolutely pro-choice, but I also know that God gives each of us free will.
Yeah.
So we can choose. And pro-life, not pro-choice. I'm sorry. I am pro-life.
Okay.
I am pro-life.
I was letting you right.
I'm pro-life. Thank you. Sorry.
And this
Thank
diversity.
You. No. I am pro-life because God is pro-life. That is.
That's the elder's wife.
Yes.
Just kidding. Just kidding.
I am pro-life.
I saw you looking at Lee, and I must have he was making a face.
Like, why is he mouthing at me? Yes, I am pro-life. But I do know that God gives everyone free will, so we can choose.
Yeah.
And I think that we need to love on people when they're in the place of needing to make a choice. And then whatever choice they make, we need to not judge them.
Yes, absolutely.
Because that's what grace is. And like you said, anything, God can redeem anything. And although I completely disagree with abortion, I do understand why some women get it. I get it.
Yep.
Like if you, for the women who are just sleeping around and you're careless and you just popping baby after baby, like, honey, you need to close your legs. You need to get a grip. But I do also understand that there are other cases where there's been rape. What do we do in that case? My husband has unequivocally said that had that ever happened to me, I'm sorry, I'm not raising another man's baby. So what is a woman supposed to do with that?
Yeah.
Or there have been cases you mentioned earlier that the guy give her $300 and go his way, but there have been young men who are like, I want my child, and the girl's like, no, and she goes anyway. What is he supposed to do with that? So there are a lot of scenarios, there are a lot of things that go in, that play into this that I think we have to be mindful of and not just jump on a girl because she's like, well, I'm just getting an abortion.
Correct.
Because that sounds not any different than, well, I'm just going to watch porn or I'm just going to go, do whatever. It's still going against what God's perfect plan is. So I think that we have to lovingly, try to coerce, lovingly inform, lovingly resource, with the understanding that not everybody's going to make the decision that we're presenting, that we're offering, and I would hate that. I would hate to see a girl do that. I know people who have, and I hate that, but I love them.
Yep.
And I think we have to realize that that's what we have to do because it's not easy to make that choice.
Yeah.
And I've heard plenty of women who've made that choice and the regret that you live with day after day, that when the birthday comes back around every time, or you've had complications and now for whatever, you're married and now you can't have kids because it jacked you up.
Yeah.
There are a lot of things that go into this. I don't think that women make that choice lightly. And so for them to go to a clinic and be badgered by us Christians, I don't think that's a good idea. I think there's a better way, you know, to do that. Now I know that there are Christians who lovingly come along, that are at the clinics, who are very loving, and you know, I know some, you know, who do that, and it's been effective. Even if those women have said, "Oh, I am going to have the baby and I'll give it up," you know, that's kind of what we want to offer, you know, to them. So I think that it's how we do it. Yes, I'm pro-life, but I'm not going to beat nobody up. You know, if they choose to do that.
And there's the other part too of the hyper grace. You know, Jesus loves us all, and you know, while he does, you know, it's just kind of like there's also this hyper grace component as well. Girl, get as many abortions you want to. You know, like so. I think just trying to find that balance. And really trying to, you know, live out. I think, you know, me and my husband were having a conversation the other day because Judah is in a literacy program over the summer. And in one of the books that we were reading, it was talking about the different dynamics of a family. And in one of the pages, it had, it was like, you know, some people, you know, have a dad. Some people, you know, have a grandmother. And then on one of the pages it said, you know, some children have two mothers. And, you know, me and my husband stopped and we were like, where did this book come from?
I remember when that book came out.
Oh my Lord Jesus. But even in that moment, I think we were both so quick to be like, oh my God, why is this in this book? When more so, you know, we should have been coming from the perspective of, while there are some homes who do have two mothers and there are children, they also need to hear the gospel as well, and their hearts can, you know, hopefully be changed. So I think that sometimes, you know, we really have to remove our own personal biases.
That's good.
And really step out and, you know, even though it's hard and uncomfortable, you know, if we really want to see the world, you know, the way that, you know, Jesus would want to see the world, we got to do the work.
I think if we can see, if we can choose to see people the way God sees them, I think it's a lot easier, because my husband will tell you, I really don't struggle with that when I see people who have alternative lifestyles or whatever. I'm going to engage you in conversation. And it's because you're a person. You're just a person to me.
Humanity.
You're making a choice that I don't agree with. And if that conversation comes up, I'm going to let you know I don't agree with what you're doing. But we can still have a conversation. Why can't we talk? Like, you're a person. You know, I got stuff too. You know, that somebody might not like, that is sinful. So I don't feel like we have the luxury of excluding and shunning just because someone doesn't present or believe or whatever, you know, like I do. You know, now if you come incorrect, you got a whole other issue. But as long as we can have a civil conversation, I'm all about it.
And like I said, I'm glad I wanted to have that conversation, because I didn't know where you guys stood. I assumed just because we all go to the same church and, you know, it's pretty good doctrinally. But I assume there's people within our church who may not share a pro-life view. And
it may be.
And it may be. And I think as you grow and you mature, you can understand that doesn't, you're not supposed to question their Christianity or whatever it is. And so even though I know you had to pause and make sure you said it correctly. I don't want anyone listening to think, hey, if I have this other view that we, you know, looking down on you. Because like, I think the common denominator that I heard from both of you was this idea of grace. And I would assume that you guys have people in your lives who are believers who had abortion. I know two people that I know of who are believers, who are pro-life, but when you face with that decision, it's like, you know, it's a real life decision, and we rarely know how to show grace, rarely know how to show empathy, and we're just screaming at people. Like you said, viewing them as Jesus viewed them. And Christians, we have such a bad rap for that. And because I don't know if we even realize, most of us are known for what we're against as Christians instead of what we're for. You brought this up earlier, adoption. Christians, I think, are probably one of the highest percentage of people who adopt. Christians are not known for adoption. We're more known for screaming and badgering people not to get abortions. And it's like, no, that shouldn't, and I hate to put it in terms of like business and marketing, but it's like, why is that not held to the forefront, that no, we've been adopted, So we understand the value of adoption, but more often than not, we're just known for just, screaming at you going to hell, and then they got the pictures of the baby cut out, and it's like, who are you winning? You're not, like, all you're doing is pushing the people away. And even just the thing about Jesus, like, he didn't just care about someone's spiritual health, he cared about a person holistically.
Yes.
And I feel as Christians, we just care, are you going to hell? And that's what we care about. It's like, there's a way to talk to people. And we don't know how to talk to people as Christians. And this debate, because like you said, it really isn't a debate when you really think about it, because, I like to fight. I'm more power to the people who try, because for so many people, they're like, this is such a victory. I didn't really view it as that big of a victory. For me, it's like, this is not my home. So it's like, maybe I'm too cynical when it comes to that, but it's like, the world does not worship God. We're just passing through. So when the world is acting contrary to what Scripture says, it's just doing what Scripture has said.
We should expect it.
We're on. This is the mission field.
Right.
So it's like, the people who need the grace most are those in the LGBT community.
Yes.
Those who are, pro-choice. Those are the people who need the most grace. And it's like, we just push them further and further away from us, when it's like, God is like, that's your mission field, right there.
I wouldn't want it. Like, if you come at me like that, and I'm a believer.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want to have anything to do with you. So we have to realize that we need to approach people the way we would want to be approached. And like when Jesus approached the woman at the well, if you really think about it, he told her about herself. But how did he do it? Is the question. He was like, I know about your life. But he engaged her first in a way that she felt like she could respond. Like, she questioned him first, like what are you doing talking to me? But he broke down those defenses in a way that she could hear him. And then she was changed because of that. And I think we can break down defenses by being loving. We see what you are. I know who you are. But if I love you, I break down your defenses, and now we can have a conversation. And it may not happen right that moment. It may happen over time. But we have to build trust. People have to be able to see us as a human being and not just the Christian. Like, if that's what we're wearing, don't nobody want that. So we have to watch that.
And I think we also too have to do, in spaces of faith, we have to be more active in state legislation. We have to be more active in doing things on more of a micro level, because that's where the change is.
That's true.
So if we have all these teenage mothers, and we know that that's an issue in Wake County or Durham, then why aren't there more residential resources for those for those girls? Why aren't there why is it just always we're going to take from the community? What about pouring into the community by creating those resources? So I think that's another practical way of looking at it, that even if you remove faith, we're talking about basic humanity. And I think that we just have to, in America, we just have to get to that space.
I mean, if you think about it, like my brother works for the Peace Corps. A lot of them are not believers.
No.
But what are they doing? They're going into places that we don't want to go.
Yeah.
And they are loving on people in a way that we don't want to love. And so, truth be told, they're putting a lot of us to shame. So we need to change the narrative. We need to change the action that we're presenting.
And it kind of brings us full circle, because you were just talking about just valuing people as human beings. And again, it goes back to that identity piece, that we see that each and every person is made in the image of God. And that's first and foremost where we find our identity, in that imago Dei, in that image of God. And as a mother, as a wife, that's the first thing. You see, I'm an image bearer, and I get to just see that outworked in these different areas of life. And even talking about this topic of abortion, that these individuals are made in the image of God. We may disagree with their decision, but they still are in need of redemption. They still are in need of grace and reconciliation. And like I said, so oftentimes we kind of have this stigma of someone who who's getting an abortion as less than.
Yes.
You know, as they don't value what it is to be a mother, and that's not the case. They're just faced with a difficult decision, and they feel that's their only alternative.
Only way.
And as people who do have an understanding of who God is and the grace that's been shown to us, it's like this is prime opportunity to show grace to other people. So like I said, I appreciate the conversation. Never know what's gonna happen going into these things, but you guys did a phenomenal job. And I didn't know before we wrapped up if there's anything that you guys wanted to say in closing. Or any comments, anything? Nothing. If you ain't got nothing, that's fine.
I just want to say thank you for, allowing us to share our thoughts and views and opinions and our faith, ultimately, with whoever's watching, but particularly the moms, because this is about moms. And so my prayer is that for anyone who is listening, that if you can take one thing that we have said that makes your life better as a mom, then we have done what God has commissioned us to do. So that would be my prayer, and it would be my joy as well.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think that, I guess something that I would say is just, motherhood is imperfect. You know, it's imperfect. It's a learning curve. I'm sure, Paula can. She's had 7 kids, and she's
still
obviously
a learning curve.
It's still a learning curve. But there's no book that's going to teach you how to be a mother. But there is a book that'll teach you how to love.
And ask somebody. If you see, if you're a mom and you see somebody who is mothering the way you want to mother, and you feel like you're missing the mark, pull them aside and ask them. If you see somebody like when I see kids in the grocery store who are undisciplined, I want to snatch the parent. I don't want to snatch the kid. I want to snatch the parent. Because you haven't figured out what you need to do for this child not to be leading you in the grocery store.
That's good.
And so there's a way. There is absolutely a way. I used to take all of my kids to the grocery store when I would go, and my husband would say, "Why are you taking them all?" And I said, "Because I want them to know how to act when we're in public. If they stay home, I'm a stay-at-home mom, but we don't stay home. If I keep them in the house, they don't know how to act in public. I need them to know how to come when I say come, go when I say go, speak when people speak to you. This is a stranger. This is how far you go. If I say don't go up underneath that clothing rack, and I pinch your arm and twist it, and you do the silent scream, you understand we're not doing that again.
You pinching their arm, man.
Oh, yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. And I believe in spanking in the store. If you act up in the store, I spank you in the store.
I was going to ask you that, because I think that, especially in the Black community, when you say discipline, we immediately think of a beating. Excuse me, a spanking. Sorry.
That too. Both of them.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think that that's something too that child abuse and neglect. I think that too is something that's not also talked about as well with being a mother. I think that a lot of, even with DSS, Department of Social Services, a lot of the rates and the percentages that they see are with young moms that don't have the skills, lack of education, they don't know how to discipline. They're often single moms,
and they're tired, frustrated, and angry.
They have multiple children. There's financial hardship. And so I think that too, if we had more of a platform to talk about how do you lovingly discipline your child? How do you lovingly do that? Different people have different perspectives on spanking and beating and all of that type of stuff.
And that is something that I actually do talk about in my book as well, because there is I feel like there's a misunderstanding, like you're saying, about spanking versus beating. The whole idea is discipline. Spanking can be a component, but not even for every child. Each one of my children got a different form of discipline, because the purpose is to go after the heart, not to break the spirit of the child. And so if you are spanking a child whose heart is really tender, and all you have to do is say don't do that, and you spank them, you crush them. So you have to know each one of your children and know what that discipline needs to look like per child, per incident. And there are times where some of the stuff they did was really funny, and we were laughing. It's not a good time to discipline either, because now they've seen that you think it's funny. So there's that's a whole nother conversation. what should discipline look like? But in Proverbs, we are commanded to discipline because the rod of correction will drive hell far from them. And I want hell driven from each one of my children. And that means I have a responsibility to discipline them. So here's the thing. If I don't correct my child now, the law is going to correct them later. I love them. So my correction is loving. The law don't care. And I made sure that my children understood that. Like, I am spanking you because I love you. And I want to see you be a citizen who offers, who is a contributor to society and not a taker. And so I will spank you. And they understood that. That's keeping them from the hands of someone who could care less about their lives or their soul. So I think if we understand what discipline is and what it is for, I think it would make all the difference. And don't discipline when you're tired. Don't discipline when out of anger. Definitely don't discipline out of anger. A child feels that. They know that. And then you watch what you use to discipline. You know what's going to work. Is sitting in a corner going to work? Because if that's what the punishment works for this particular child, then use that. You know, use the least means possible to corral their heart back. Because we're pointing, as believers, we're pointing them to a Savior. That's our whole goal for everything we do. Discipline, love, reading, feeding, changing diapers is pointing them to a Savior.
Yeah.
So if we can see it that way, we can wrap our brains around that, I think it makes a difference in how we raise our children.
And like I said, just blown away about just the content that you guys were able to give. And so I'm so grateful that, number one, that y'all wanted to come and do this. Because this is only possible because of you guys.
And I also will say this too, Brandon. This is something that we did not talk about, but mothers of children with disabilities. That just kind of came to me. But that's also something.
Yes, it is.
That's a different area.
Yes, it is.
That we don't talk about or discuss. You know, children with significant disabilities.
And or mental illness.
Yes. And, you know, I think that I wish that there was more support around that too, you know, of, you know, no one really will know what that's like unless you have that experience on your own. But I mean, seeing it and working with, you know, that population versus actually being it myself, yeah, I'm just thinking about, you know, for a future podcast episode.
Well,
I think that would be great for a future podcast episode. And as an older mom at our church, which is that is just funny to me, but I am. I feel responsible for you younger moms. I really do. And so if I see something, I'm going to say something.
Yeah.
I'm going to be loving, but I'm going to say something. And there have been a couple of moms where I'm like, I really think you need to have the doctor see this one. You know, and they'll say, oh, really, Miss Paula? I was wondering. I'm like, just let them tell you. Just have a visit, you know, because I can see the struggle. And if I see a mom struggling, I'm gonna say something, you know, because and I want the moms in our congregation to understand, and most of them who know me know that, you know, you can come to me, you can call me. There have been times where I've just, you know, we've gone to dinner, we have a powwow. We used to go to homes, and I just let them, you know, hit me with questions. That's what they wanted to do. Like, can we meet at a home and you come and we just ask you questions? Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Like, I'm a resource. I'm a dinosaur. I'm a resource. So use me.
Yeah.
Use me. That's what I'm here. I didn't go through everything I went through just for me.
And, you know, I'm sitting here just thinking about all the different scenarios, you know, mothers of children who are incarcerated, mothers are, you know, and I think that it speaks to motherhood. There is no one definition, you know, that it's vague, it's gray, it looks different, you know,
like I said, I'm just blown away because I'm so busy preparing, setting up, just like. Because I literally came up with my list like right before time, and I'm like, I hope we can get something out of this. and it was phenomenal.
Yeah.
It was,
Yeah.
it was really good. So I appreciate you guys coming through,
Absolutely.
just being able just to be open and vulnerable,
Yeah.
and just share just real things. Because even with before you guys came here, and Elder Lee was just saying, just wanting to have real conversation, not surface level things, because people are looking for answers.
Yes.
People want to see that transparency, and that's why I call it you're doing it wrong, because we don't get it right all the time.
Yeah.
But as Christians, we want to put on this facade like we've got it all together, and we don't.
Yeah.
And it's not simply for the sake of saying, hey, I don't have it together, but the sake of growth. And that's why we need each other. And me personally, I just like just being in isolation, but you can't grow in isolation. That you need other ideas, you need people who
Yeah.
think differently from you, who have different experiences than you, so that you can learn and you can grow. And so I'm so appreciative
Yeah.
for you guys coming through. I'm very excited. Yeah, like I said, man, we got some really good stuff. So for those of you guys who are listening, I hope you enjoyed and, like I said, got something from it, and just see their hearts. And I know you have a ministry coming. I don't know if you wanted to plug your website, plug anything
absolutely.
like that. Please do.
So as previously discussed, I am the founder of the Bonafide Wife, and we are a community of wives who keep it real, but also giving God glory through our marriage. And you can find out more information about that community at www.thebonafidewife.com. So we are also starting quarterly meetups. The first meetup is this Saturday, and I'm also going to be having a conference on next year. So I'm really excited about that.
So yeah, please check out Shirnetta. She's doing just great work, and like I say, you can just see her love and her passion for wives and mothers, and she's definitely a great resource. But thank you guys for tuning in. Hopefully we'll be with you guys next month. But until then, peace out. See you.
Get this, now that's all. This the pepper on your salt, my dudes, I grind it out. And the answer to the questions of life, I find it out. Without stress, I walk with access. Be he whom access with simple blackness. Cause in the end, God bless us, which is so profound. So I stick to my guns. Urban soul be the sound, and y'all do it.